life after special ed and then struggling into how to connect with services. So we said, let's go ahead and start this and connect with them early on. So the first thing I want to point out, which I'm sure you've all heard, is the resources or the finances available for individuals after they leave special ed are very, very limited. So it's important that you guys understand what you need to do right now so that you're able to access services afterwards. It's not as simple as just living in the local community and going to your local school district and saying, hey, I live here, can my son or daughter attend your system, okay? Oh, I guess. It worked until a few minutes ago. Wonder.
You can use my computer. Good too.
There we go. It just needed a special touch, I think. So once again, touching on the special education system from pretty much kindergarten up to 12, it's all mandated services coordinated through the IEP process. So like I said, you live in the district, you're entitled to go in and say, my son or daughter needs services and so forth and so on. Once they turn 22, in the adult world, nothing is mandated. If you want to keep your son or daughter at home for the rest of their life and not pursue services, they're going to be fine with it. Nobody's going to say, hey, you have to send them somewhere. So it's really important for parents and the families to learn how to advocate for the adequate services, which are funded by the state, Department of Human Services. And most, if not all, are Medicaid waiver services, which is going to fall into why we need to do the things that we're going to talk about today. This is going to be fun, guys.
It might just be a lag in our computer's projector connection.
Like when I
By the way, is it exactly when they turn 22 or the spring after they turn 22?
For the most part, most school districts will say one day before they turn 22nd birthday. Some school districts allow them to finish out the school year, so it's really specific to the. By law, it's one day before, but I know some school districts that allow them to, if they start that year, even though they turn 22, they can finish out. So I don't want to, speak for any specific school district. It really depends.
Got it.
Oh, I see. Now it's going too fast. I'm going back because this is way ahead. I don't know how I got it to go. Now we're at the end. Oh, gosh. Okay, we're here. So when I mentioned that most services are Medicaid waiver, that's the importance of PUNS. Every time that we talk to a family, the first thing we do is, have you done PUNS? Do you know PUNS? Have you signed up? That's like key number one. I know that recently they're talking about, unless if it's within the 5 years of planning stage, we don't want to see a family. But honestly, in our experience, it takes a long time to get pulled from the PUNS. So I would encourage families to sign up their son or daughter as early as possible and then stay on it, every year. Because it's a one-time registration or signing up the questionnaire, but a lot of parents don't realize that it's a yearly update. So if you don't update it to say, I'm still here, I'm still going to need services, they might actually bump you off the list, which they did in the last 2-3 years. The list got so huge that the state wanted to clean it up a little bit. So they asked the caseworkers to try to reach out to all the families. And those that were not able to connect with them, they actually took them off. In some district that I work in, a lot of families had to go back on and get back on the list again, which was like all those years that they were on, and then kind of like starting from scratch. So I always encourage parents, once you do it once, Write down on your calendar when you're gonna do it. Some caseworkers are great and will call you or send you a letter. Don't rely on that. That's where the advocating starts. They're not gonna reach out to you, you gotta reach out to them. So maybe at the IEP, you can make a note to, update your PUNS on your son or daughter's birthday to update it, but something that's gonna cue you to always remember to update the PUNS every year. Is everybody pretty much aware of what PUNS is and is registered, I hope? So,
I've heard of it, but.
well, which is fine, I mean, you're not the first.
Can you please explain? I'm not-
Okay, so PUNS is the Illinois State Waiting List for individuals with developmental disabilities that tells the state, I'm gonna need services in some point in time.
So where are we supposed to sign this? Where are we supposed to go?
So I'm gonna show you a map, and afterwards, I don't have this, it's by office. I don't have the specifics of the office that you guys would go to, but it's broken up into different areas, so depending on where you live is where you need to go. Out here is PACT, and I believe they're in Lyle.
Yeah.
So there, if you could picture it, there's providers, there's the state, and PACT is kind of like the middleman, where you have to go and sign up with them, and they will do the screening and make sure that your son or daughter is eligible. And then there's a questionnaire, and then they put you on this list that kind of tells them, okay, they're gonna need services in the
What
future.
age we can start?
I used to tell individuals that 4,
Yeah.
as early as 4 years old. And like I said, I still encourage you right now, 18, 19, 20, I mean, it's never too late. The earlier you do it, the better. But some of them might tell you if you're not within the 5-year planning stage, they don't want to see you. I think you need to get in there and say, yes, I want to get my name on it. There was a question back there?
Yeah, I have a question. I was just gonna say, with the PUNS, I know when we went into high school at her 14th birthday, at that point, it was like recommended to get her onto the PUNS because they hit different benchmarks. Like when you turn 19, they get moved up on a list. If something happens to one of the parents, whether it's financial or whether it's health, they get bumped on the list. So, I'm assuming that, it's the earlier you do it, don't let them tell you come back in 4 years or whatever.
Correct.
Just get on there and we've been lucky to have a person who contacts us every spring, but I agree with you, make it.
It really depends on the office and the caseworker. So on here, I only have a sample because I don't have a lot of copies. We have a manual that walks you through a lot of the stuff in more detail of what I'm gonna say today. You're more than welcome to go to our website, and then on our website, the UCP Seguin, there's a tab called Building Bridges. In the middle of that tab, there's a link to this manual. So not only will it walk you through like, oh, what should we be doing at 14, 15, 16, 17, and talk about PUNS and all the different resources. The nice thing is this manual has a sample of the PUNS questionnaire that you will have to fill out with the state. So it's good to look at the questions, review it, get an idea of how you want to respond. They don't allow anybody like myself or an advocate to go with you and help you fill out the questionnaire. So the best that we were able to do is get a hold of it and then provide it to the family so that you can kind of see what they're asking. Really important though is when you're filling out the questionnaire, I often tell parents, don't think I'm here and I do these things for them, because if you go in and saying my son doesn't need help with this or that, because you're helping, it's not going to look like they need services. You really need to remove yourself from the situation and answer the questions as if they were independently going to do this, because that's the way that they're going to see the need. And like the parent mentioned is, sometimes they'll say, well, they're 13, they're really quite young, it's a long time before they'll need services. They could offer services as a child. There is a child waiver. So if you qualify and you need the services, they actually can pull you from the list prior to being an adult. I recommend that you, if you do get pulled, you take advantage of it, because once you're in the system, it's like your foot is in the door. So you get the child waiver. When your son or daughter becomes an adult, they just move you from the child waiver to the adult. You don't have to go back on the list and wait for it to be called as an adult. But the chances of being called as a child are very limited. It really would have to be a family that's in crisis or needs a lot of support right then and right there and now.
What's the manual called when we look on the website? Like if we go
Building
on
bridges.
So go to the
manual?
UCP Seguin website, and then there's a tab on the top that's for the program Building Bridges to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the middle of that page, you'll see the link to the transition manual, Spanish and in English.
Okay. And the website is, I'm sorry.
UCP Seguin.
She's a card.
Oh,
And I've got
I got the
my
card,
card.
it's in here, okay, thank you,
Okay,
sorry.
that's fine.
And if families have multiple children with disabilities, they get pushed up the list as well?
They might, there's certain criteria that might push them high, on the top of the list. One thing to keep in mind is right now, state, as we all know, is in financial crisis, and they don't think that, services for developmental disabilities or people with disabilities are a priority. But if you need it, the only way you're gonna get pulled from the funds like ASAP is if the person is being neglected, homeless, or abused. If any of those situations occur right now, they automatically get services. Other than that, they go into the list, and depending on the need and what age they are, they might be in the planning stage, in the critical stage, or the, emergency stage. So that's kind of how you go up on the list based on what you tell them and based on age. But you definitely want to do that. That's step one. I'm like, when I go to a presentation, PUNS is the first thing, because that's kind of where we have to start to do the advocating and the planning. The next step is usually that we like to talk to parents about is guardianship. Guardianship is not for everybody, but I want to put it out there as an option. I've run into many families that say, oh, I thought because my son or daughter was disabled, then I was their guardian forever and ever. When they turn 18, they are an adult and consider that they are legally able to sign and apply and do whatever it is that they need to do. The school district also will need a permission from the student to continue to allow them to give you information. So that's what happens at 18. So one of the things that we do as a service, and I brought the paperwork, is we can help you look for guardianship, different levels of guardianship, and it really is individualized to what the family would like. There's a lot of private entities out there that it's a business now. There's a lot of private entities doing guardianship paperwork for a fee. I don't encourage families to have to pay for it because it's very simple. And I know some families like, it's too much paperwork, I get confused. The paperwork is available. Some families have done it by themselves. There's a legal help desk at the courthouse that would help you, and then we also will help you, depending on how much you need. So if all you need is the forms from me, I give them to you. If you say, can we set up an appointment to fill them out, we fill them out. I've actually gone to the courthouse with families to actually file the petition, and I've actually gone with them in front of the judge to actually make sure that the guardianship is done. It's not a hard process as long as everybody's on board. If both parents are on board, and if, the doctor does have to sign paperwork, so as long as all that goes well, it's an easy process. There's no reason to pay $2,100, which is what a family recently told me that she had just signed up for, just to get guardianship.
What about in divorce situations?
That's when it gets tricky, when the parents are not in agreement of who becomes guardian, or no, I don't want you to be guardian. That's usually when I will give you the resource of individuals that are a little bit more well-versed in complex cases, because it does get tricky. But typically, these are the kind of things that you would need for to apply for guardianship. Full name of everybody involved, addresses. They do phone numbers for any relatives older 18. Usually, they will need to, the guardianship is taking place, and then also, you can take up to 3 people for guardian. We always encourage, if you're gonna do the paperwork, try to at least get 2 people to become guardians, because things happen, one person might not be available, so it's always good to have that second person. Or God forbid that you go out of the country or go out of town or whatever, you always have that person. If you only do one and then later you think, oh, well, the cousin wants to be guardian or an aunt, you have to go through the entire paperwork process to add somebody on. So it's better to consider who do you want it to be a part of. There could be up to 3 people, and then get it all done in one shot.
Is that like, in addition to the parents, or is it
A
like?
total of 3, so it could be mom, dad, and a sibling, or mom, dad, and grandma. It's a total of 3.
Can you do that before they turn 18 or when they turn 18?
It's at 18. At 18. At 18.
Usually start the process at like 17.
Yeah, I mean, depending, we're finding they used to not allow us to file the petition until they actually turned 18. I've heard some families have gone a week or 2 before, and they've actually taken it, because it does take a couple of weeks to go in front of the judge.
Thank you.
Okay?
You can't do it any earlier than that?
Well, I mean, you could be a legal guardian over somebody, but as far as the guardianship we're talking about, as far as an adult, you have to be 18.
We're in front of judge for.
Right.
Yeah, no third jail. So these are the things that, like I said, all the paperwork is here. Here's the link to where all the paperwork is found. And like I said, there's been parents that they have done it, filled it out, and it's been successful. But I got a call from a parent yesterday in Naperville that she got it, she filled it out, she went to the help desk, and then she got overwhelmed and she's like, I'm kind of lost, can you help me? Well, we can't do that. I wanted to provide all these resources so that if you feel confident and comfortable with doing it, you definitely can. But I want to make sure that you guys understand that that is one of the services that we offer. And one of the things that I failed to mention, because I know people always ask, what's the cost? The cost is completely free. This is a program we started in 2009, and we went out and sought out grants and different funders that were willing to fund this program to help the families. So it's a completely free resource to the families, to the schools, as far as me coming and training individuals. All that I need is for you to be willing to be engaged and to call us and set up an appointment. Our main office is in Cicero, but I know that as we're getting into the DuPage area, it's starting to be far, so I'm willing to meet you halfway, or some families say, can you come to my home? Mm-hmm. Some school districts allow space for us to come and meet on school grounds, whatever you feel comfortable. We've even done a local Panera Bread or anything that's out in the open to meet with the families. So, I mean, somebody was just mentioning a family that lives far away. I'm willing to work with them if they meet me halfway, if they're just like really, really out of our local district. Okay? Also want to talk about financial assistance as far as we can help your son or daughter connect to resources such as Social Security and SSI and SSDI. I don't want to complicate things, but I know that people get confused when they're like, oh, I get a small check and a big check. So their SSI is the most common one that everybody has. That's based on need and based on the disability. So typically, we don't encourage families to apply for SSI when the child is under 18 because they are your dependent and they're going to ask for the parent's information. In most cases, they will be denied because of the financial need, because this is based on do you have the disability and do you have the financial need. So what we end up doing is we wait until they turn 18, and then at 18, we actually apply, because at 18, even though they're living under your household, they are an adult, and we need to help them become self-sufficient and get some financial resources. So we will say, yes, they live with you, but now they need to contribute to your household. We are not going to provide any information about the parents' finances or anybody that lives there, because now we're just talking about the individual as an adult. So typically, we wait to do that at 18.
So you provide help for the SSI, fill out all the applications?
We do. I have the link here. We usually do it online because it starts the process. It opens up your record. So some families have gotten it in 3 weeks. Some families it's taken 6 months. When we do the application online, it backdates. So it took you 6 months to get the benefits approved. They're supposed to go back to when the initial application was approved.
6 months before turn 18?
No. It's just, it might be that
might be the process.
That might be the process. It's 3 weeks or 6 months. That's as long as it's been.
Right. I was just going to say, with SSI, if you have any kind of, if your son or daughter has any kind of bank accounts, put them in a trust, but work with somebody to make sure they're the right trust. Because it took us almost a year and a half to get the SSI, because they kept throwing it back to their trust department and this and that, because she had a special needs trust. And that just, sometimes I think they just find a way to delay things. They did back pay her for, from the time we applied, but it's so much easier. Just don't have anything in their name.
So that's a good point. So when I say this is based on disability and financial need, we don't encourage adults 18 and older, once we're going to start doing this process, they cannot have anything in their name over 2,000. That's like the magical number. So it's like, and I know we've run into situations where because they have a disability, grandma or grandpa thought it was a nice thing to include them in the will, or give them. That's what we call the special needs trust, which is we give you a resource to do that with a lawyer, because anything like that needs to be put in a special needs trust. And what it is it's kind of a way to let the government know it's there, but it's kind of hidden, and they cannot count that as immediate financial resources that they have. So you do the special needs trust, and then after that, anything that they have has to stay under 2,000. Not only when we apply for it, but ongoing, because they will check. Any month that the individual ends up going over 2,000 that they were able to check, they'll come back and say, For the month of February, March, and April, it was over 2,000, so now you owe us the money back. And you have to give the benefits back, which is how some families end up getting into an overpayment situation. So it's really, really important that you watch that 2,000 mark, okay? SSDI, I'll touch on it briefly just because it is there as a possibility. SSDI, some individuals are able to get both. Not everybody gets SSDI because the requirement for SSDI is only if the individual themselves has worked enough work credits to earn it. Like we are all working and we're earning work credits so that one day if we become disabled, that's what we would get SSDI. But individuals with a disability might be able to touch into it because if their parent ever becomes disabled, retired, or deceased, their benefits then roll over to the individual with a disability. So that's how you end up an individual getting both of them at the same time. Typically, the SSDI is going to be a smaller amount than the SSI, and they have a max of both. Like SSI, the max that somebody could get is $750, and SSDI is smaller, but I think it's a little bit over 1,000. So let's say that your person is getting $750 and then they get SSDI. The government will adjust it so they still don't go over the cap, but they could do both. But remember, that happens only if the parent is disabled, retired, or deceased, and it's automatic. So it's not that we have to apply for SSDI. Once they meet that category, it automatically happens to the individual. So I've had families say, why did this other check start coming out of nowhere?
So simply, if nothing happened after retire?
If you retire, they will pick it up, and eventually your son or daughter will start getting the benefits.
Okay.
It's automatic. It's not that we have to go let them know or anything like that.
Oh, that's also much.
As you see, the list for what you need for SSI or the possibilities of what you need for SSI is fairly long. It's a long process. I know that's why I didn't want to recommend let's open up and start the application here because it's a very individualized process. What might apply for you might not apply for somebody else because, and the more that you provide initially on the online application, the less headache you'll have to deal with later, and the chances that your application will move quicker. And like I said, we had a family that we were shocked because she came in with a stack this high and we provided everything and anything that they asked for, but she got the benefits approved within 3 weeks, which is the fastest we've ever seen. And then we have others that, maybe it wasn't sufficient. They'll send you a letter, they'll request for more and so forth and so on, and it drags out a little bit longer. So it's really, I cannot tell you it's going to take you 3 weeks, it's going to take you 4 months. It's really based on the situation, how much information and how many of these criteria they need to provide information to. And then we just kind of take it from there. But like I said, the nice thing is once you do the online application, it's stamped, and when and if you're approved, it backdates to that date. But typically, information about the psych eval IEP to prove the diagnosis, pay stubs for the individual. If
Do you need both the psych evaluation?
The more you provide, the better. Because sometimes the IEPs might not be clear as to the specific diagnosis and where they fall. So if you have an evaluation to add to the IEP, I encourage that. Because then it's going to build up the case on the disability.
So what's the time frame for the psych eval?
Typically, I know the schools usually do 3 years, but I know that as in the adult world, sometimes the evals are good up to 10 years. So I mean, it really varies. The more recent, the better. If the individual works or has ever worked, it's good to have information about that. Doctors. I know it's really tedious, but if you are prepared with every doctor and they ask when was the last time that they saw you for what, hospitalizations, all that information is really critical because it will move the process along. Medications, what's the diagnosis, the Social Security card, any financial information, do they have a bank account, and all that, because they're going to want to check. Employer history, names, addresses, when did they start, when did they end, if it's already ended, and so forth and so on. So all this, if you kind of get yourself prepared before we do the online, or if you do it and have that in front of you, it will make the process easier. But it's taken us anywhere from 1 to 3 hours to do one individual family, depending on how many of this criteria apply to them.
One question, because my son had valuation like over 10 years ago, so he was in a different condition. So how he looks now from the time he started?
If it's over 10 years, we definitely would need more current information. Or if not, if
From
he-
his doctor, does it not?
If he's seeing a doctor on a regular basis,
Yeah.
that's good because we'll provide the information of the doctor.
Okay.
And then at the end of the application, they ask you, are you giving permission for us to access the doctors that you provided? And then they will reach out to get that info, but that takes longer because you might not be at the top of the list versus you providing it up front so that they have to do less digging on themselves.
The doctor got this about all the surgery, what he had, all this stuff, so.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like for me, it's gonna be hard to figure out, explain all this
So
information.
you don't have to explain it, you just have to give the name of the
The
doctors and their
doctor,
phone numbers
they're
and the
gonna put the
address.
information.
Yep.
Yeah.
So here's the link for the actual application online. And like I said, it's up to you if you want to go on. It's not, I can't print one as a preview like the hard copies like before. It's a step-by-step and if you're stuck on question 3, it will not let you go to 4, 5, and 6 and so forth. So it's really best that you gather all the information and have it in front of you so that you don't, there's a way to save what you do and come back at a later time. So it's not like you're gonna lose whatever you did if you can't find that doctor name and have to go look and come back on a different day.
So one thing that we experience is that if your child has a bank account with things that they got for their, communion or whatever that you've been saving and its value is over $2,000 and you can't have that, if you try to take money out of the bank and go buy things with it, you absolutely have to save your receipts for
And tell them
that
what to
because
use for.
Social Security has a 3-year look back on your child's financial things. So if you decide that you're gonna get rid of this extra money so your child can meet that $2,000 threshold, they're gonna wanna know how is that money spent? And you need to have receipts for it.
So there was kind of 2 things though, because like once you get Social Security, like I keep for
Right.
receipts because I think last year I had to fill out.
If you're a representative payee,
Right, how much is this and that, but I thought you were going down the path of before you get this, like, if you, say you, like you said, maybe they had a checking account that had $3,500 in it from gifts and such. What we ended up doing to get it under 2,000 is we actually wrote a check saying, you know what, we paid for camp and we paid for this and we paid for that. So that way they got it out of hers so she can start receiving payments.
So you can buy your child Legos,
if there's
but just save
so you can
receipts.
become a representative payee over the benefits, and that's where you really want to keep track. Well, I've seen the reports. Every year you'll have to file a report as to how are you spending the money for your son or daughter. They'll say, this year, this is a report, he received $9,500 for the year. Give us a breakdown of how it was spent, and you don't have, it says housing, clothing, rec leisure, and you just kind of balance that off. I have not heard of someone actually being called to say, bring me the receipts that show that you spent it this way, but they do want to make sure that you're not just taking the benefits on behalf of the person and that they're not being used for them.
Right.
I'm not sure if you've encountered this, and maybe this is a topic we can talk about at the end, but if you're interested in opening an ABLE account, would you recommend moving that money prior to applying to get them underneath that 2,000?
It's still a 3-year
It's
look
a-
back though.
Yeah, and sometimes they catch us, sometimes they don't.
Okay.
So, I mean, sometimes the families just kind of deal with it and it doesn't pop up.
Okay.
So usually it's a 3-year look back, so it's like, especially when there's,
Oh, especially when they're looking at trusts and that.
yeah, exactly, when it's a large sum, it's more, then it becomes a little bit more complicated.
How about he doesn't have any account?
That's better, it's easy.
In my mind,
I said we have to go back to the old way of hiding the money under the mattress. There's no proof, and just hope there's never a fire and your money's
It's
not
very
under the
simple.
fire. So let's talk about Medicaid and Medicare. So a lot of times families say, why do I want to get Medicaid? My son or daughter has private health insurance, which is great. But like I mentioned earlier, as adults, most of the programs that are out there are Medicaid waiver programs. So what it means is that unless if you're willing to private pay for all those programs, you need to get that Medicaid card. Same scenario though, prior to 18, it's going to be based on parents' finances. So they do have the All Kids program that if you're in financial need, they offer it. But other than that, we wait to 18 to help you apply for Medicaid. Same scenario, we don't share parents' information even though they will ask. And that's how they trick a lot of parents. Oh, What does dad make? Where do they work? And we're like, do not tell them. They have a regular template of all the questions, the standard questions, and sometimes they ask them, and parents feel like, well, they asked me, so I told them. After 18, when we apply for Medicaid, once again, it's only the individual's information. They are part of your household, but they don't need to be sharing any information about anybody else. It is possible for you to have private health insurance for medical needs and the Medicaid as a backup or for the programs. So I know parents feel like, but I like the doctor, I want to stay with it is possible. One question on the Medicaid application that I want to put out there, because you need to think about it, is it does say, will anybody be claiming you as a dependent with the income tax? That's something that you probably need to think about, because if you say yes and you're going to continue to claim them, then the government's going to say, well, then you're in charge, you have to provide, we're not going to provide a medical. So we highly recommend that you don't claim them after 18 so that they could become a separate individual, and that we answer no. Some parents answer no and they still do it, and they get lucky, they don't get checked, but I don't recommend it because that is something that will kind of bump them off. So that's something that you need to consider after 18. Is it worth continuing to claim them as a dependent if it might disqualify them from some of the government benefits?
So I was just gonna ask the difference between Medicaid and Medicare.
That's my next one.
But I got, we use my insurance all the time, and just like to Medicaid, just, I can have it just in case something happens.
It could be a backup, or when they get
backup,
when
not using, just keep it.
But you gotta keep it.
Just keep it.
Keep active with it. So, and I'll tell you in a bit.
What can be used only for health problems or some other stuff?
So remember that list I told you about, the pumps list?
Yeah.
When he gets pulled from that list, one of the criteria he has to have is Medicaid. So if he doesn't have Medicaid, it's gonna stop him from getting the state funding. So it's always good to get it. How soon, it's really up to the family. Typically, when you get pulled from the funds, they used to say they give you 6 months to get everything together to get the case going. But I don't want parents to wait until they get pulled and then be under the pressure to be applying and hoping that it goes through and then learning that there's all these things. So I recommend that you try to do it as soon as you feel comfortable, but don't wait too much. Now, when I say you get it, every year there's a redetermination. So it's happened to us, even in the adults that we serve in our programs, the parents completely forget about Medicaid. Because they always go to the doctor with the private health insurance, and then they get this thing from Medicaid, and then they forgot to send it back, and then it gets canceled. And we know, because when we try to bill for it, it gets rejected, and we call the family, they're like, oh, I must have not sent the paper back to keep it active. So it's really important that you keep it active for the program and services fees. Okay?
You cannot be used for, like, after 22, he's gonna be over 22 for daycare or something like this?
Yeah.
Well, for programs that are certified that are Medicaid waiver. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They take
I'm
Medicaid.
talking about.
That's why we need it, to pay for those programs.
Okay.
Okay, so Medicare, what about Medicare? Medicare is one of those things that kind of goes with SSDI. If somebody gets SSDI after 18, after 2 years of getting SSDI, which is the one that's qualified by the parents, automatically they get Medicare. So, or in the same scenario, if the person ever worked enough to the point that they're eligible for SSDI, and then 2 years after they get Medicare. So Medicare is one of those things that we cannot just apply. They're going to have to be eligible, and it's connected to the SSDI. And you can have both Medicaid and Medicare. It's not like, oh, do I have to give up one or the other? So they will both work together. So Medicare will only kick in when the SSDI, 2 years after they start getting the benefits for SSDI. Typically, what you need for the Medicaid, in SNAP and Lincoln, I'll talk a little bit about that, is a state ID, birth certificate of the individual, SSI statement. We always like to start with SSI, because that's the way we prove the disability and get into the government system. Then Medicaid becomes such a much easier process. Once you show that you're already an SSI recipient, then they know that you've already proved that the disability is there and so forth and so on, and then it makes this process much easier. Bank statements, once again, because it's a financial need situation, so the 2,000 and under also applies for this. Anytime that you go over 2,000 and over, if they ever check, it will go ahead and disqualify you. Rent receipts, I talked about, as an adult, they're part of your household. they want to see that the person has a need for this. So we always want to say, okay, they live with me and they help me pay. So we encourage families to write out a receipt and say, okay, they pay me $300, $400 a month, because that's how they're going to be saying that they're using their Social Security money and why they need Medicaid. If not, it's going to look like, hey, they're rich, they get $750 a month from SSI and they do nothing with it. So that's when the receipts come in place. And if the person works, we also have to report the pay stub. It is possible that they're able to work and still get these benefits. It just depends on how much they earn and how many hours. So if they try to work full-time or close to full-time and they get good on hourly, then we have to be concerned that they might be losing these benefits. But that is something that we can kind of walk you through if it's a scenario that it applies to your family. Here's the link. This is fairly new. We used to do the Medicaid application on paper, which I have here, and I don't have copies, and probably don't want to do it the old-fashioned way. But this is a hard copy of how we did it before. It's only been about 3 months that they actually got with technology, and they now do it online. So we just 2 weeks ago, we helped the family do it online, and it was not that bad. It's time consuming because once again, it's very similar to Social Security. They're asking you what doctor, when did they last go, where did they work, when did they start, when did they end, and so forth and so on. But it's really nice because now, even if you already have Medicaid, you can go ahead and set up an account online. And at any time that you have questions or you want to check the status, you do it online versus the old-fashioned way of going to the Medicaid office, going early in the morning, hope that you are the first 15 that they take for the day, because they can only do so many walk-ins a day, because depending on the office activity. So this is a nice thing, because even if we apply for somebody and we don't know the status, instead of trying to call and hope they answer the phone or walking into the office, you can actually check the status online now. So it's a really, really great thing that they did this for Medicaid also. Other things that we can help you with is with connecting with rehab services. And that's more when you are done with school, because through the school, they do have access to Department of Rehab Services, transition and step programs, but we help as adults also. Community college, there are some individuals that want to go to college after they're done with school, so we look at where do you live, what resources does the local community college have. Legal, we're not saying we're specialists with special needs trust, we have different resources that we will connect you if there's a financial situation that needs to be dealt in that manner. Transportation, the yellow bus stops coming when school's over, guys. So I know that's a hard thing for parents to deal with, but there's not a lot of adult providers that provide transportation. So when and if you choose to send them to a program, most likely you will have to figure out how to get them to and from. So we help with making sure that the family applies for the RTA door-to-door services. It's completely free. You get the application online. It's simple, and you could do that right now. You don't have to wait until they leave school. It's a service that they have now. So let's say they wanted to go to the mall with a friend, they could use that. Let's say they needed to go to the doctor, your car was broken down. You can use it to go to the doctor. So it's something that I encourage that you think about right now and having it there so that it's a done deal and it's one less headache that you have to deal with once they age out of school.
So the person with the disability can bring somebody with them along for the ride.
Correct. And sometimes that's a great way to do right now. Maybe you want to break them into that system and going with them and just kind of getting them used to, because you don't want to wait till they're done and then no yellow bus, but now you got to get on this bus with other individuals that you might know, might not know, because it's kind of like a personalized cap.
Can I comment that? So I'm Heather. I also teach at the Transition Center. If students come to us, I'm happy to help fill out the paperwork and do all that, but I will say if you have SSI, it's usually a 48-hour turnaround. If you don't have SSI, it's currently like a 4 to 6 month wait. So spend that 4 to 6 months applying for SSI, and then your RTA card will come like that.
And that's what we always start with SSI, because once you're certified with SSI, like everything happens so much easier. Last but not least, we've also helped families with connecting with rec leisure programs. So our job is, we meet you as early as 14 and we provide you with all these services and hopefully walk you through and get everything done so that on that 22nd birthday, there's no gap between one system and the other, and we hand you off to whatever it is, a community college, a rec leisure program, an adult program, a job. But our goal is that there's no gap in between, because that's how we started this program, where we were getting families in crisis 3 to 4 years after they exited special ed. And they didn't realize how different the system was in the adult world, and then they had to sit at home and wait until all these things were done. So ideally, we do them right now, and then at 22nd birthday, it's just magically all over.
It's good to see you smile, because there's so many indications that a lot of the day programs are closing. They're not getting state funds, and they're not getting the people to work there and stay there. Because I think, at any of us, we always have those great aides or the great teachers, and they work with your students for 3, 4, sometimes longer when they're in grade school. And with the turnover, it's not beneficial for either the student or
the funding in the adult world is very different to the schools. So I love the schools, but I sometimes worry they cater too much to the parents. And then when they go to the adult world, that's very different. It's a culture shock. Because typically in an adult world, the funding is like a 1-to-8 or 1-to-9 ratio. And sometimes the schools give you a one-on-one, which is a great thing, but that is something that you also want to think about in the transition years. How can I make my son or daughter as independent as possible? Because that one-on-one might not come with them at 22. So you don't want to cut them cold turkey from having a one-on-one to putting them in a day program where they're 1-to-8 or 1-to-9. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of providers that are having to close down because they simply rely on the government funds and don't do anything else. So when the money doesn't come in, they can't meet payroll, and they can no longer keep the services in place. So that is and honestly, because we're all struggling to have the staff that's required, nowadays, if you knock on somebody's door, even if you have money, private pay, if you say my son or daughter needs a one-on-one, they'll probably look the other way, because they just don't have the staff resources. They don't want to promise you something that they cannot deliver, or be in an unsafe situation where they take someone and put them in a system that's not going to work. So it is to your benefit right now to start thinking about that independence and start working with the school and saying, how can we fade some supports? How can we make them as independent as possible? Because that's the reality of the adult world.
We're actually leaving the state.
What state are you going to?
Missouri. We're number 3.
Yeah.
That was my question. I was thinking about it. You apply over here, you get this stuff over here in Illinois. You move out to different countries.
It's different for every state, so
They're all different. So you cannot carry over here to different.
Well,
the SSI, yes, it will go, because that's something that, but like Medicaid, every state has their Medicaid program. The funding, it's individualized by the state, but I know a lot of families that have picked up and gone to another state where they have better services.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you just said that SSI is the same in the country,
Right, 'cause that's a
right?
government
Yeah, that's a federal program.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, we have guardianship paperwork if you want to be brave and take all of that and try to navigate. And I do have a sheet of the funds. It's just a general number that you would call, and then they direct you based on where you live, what office you need to sign up in. And like I said, Medicaid application, but you could do it online. It's much easier. I actually think it's much friendlier. Don't forget to log in and try to get your transition manual. It's a great resource. It's easy read for parents. I have my business cards. I do have a notepad over there. If you are interested in any of the services that I mentioned, we are more than happy to assist you. And it could be a number, it could be just a few minutes, or it could be we will hold your hand as much as we need to hold it.
So are you at the facility on 31st and Central?
Yes. But I am out of the sister office, but I don't know if, without going too much into the day program, we have 6 locations total. So sister is the most known one and our biggest one.
I grew up right around.
And then we have one in Oak Park. We have a senior center for people with disabilities in LaGrange. We have a day program in the Tinley Park up south. We have another one in Villa Park, right across from the library. And our newest location is in Berkeley. And in 8 months or so, our plan is to open up another day program in the Wheaton area. So we're slowly trying to get out here.
So the one in Cicero has a beautiful garden store that we always shop
So the Cicero one, I call it our original and our building days program, because people come and really don't go out much because there's so many resources on site. And the Cicero location, we have on-site nursing, on-site behavioral support, and we have a Portillo's kitchen that sells warm food. We have a snoozling, like sensory stimulation room. And then across the street, we have a car wash that's open to the community that employs people with disabilities, but it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's a community business, but it's close to home. And then right next to us, we have a garden center and a gift store where it's open to the community, and once again, the same concept, where they can work in there and, you know, be in the middle of the community, but it's kind of very close to home, so they feel comfortable. So,
If the child has SSI now, is that something that transitions with them when they become an adult?
most likely, which is, yes. Now, a great point though on the Medicaid. So there's some individuals, there could be a lot of individuals that are in the All Kids Medicaid program right now because of the All Kids. When they turn 18, they try to cut them off because they're not thinking the disability, they're just thinking the All Kids. So we highly encourage families between 18 and 19, you gotta transfer them from the All Kids into the adult Medicaid, because often they will get cut off, and then you have to reapply and tell them, no, now it's not just a need on financial, but now because of their disability, they're eligible. Some caseworkers are great and transfer your case from one system to the other. The Medicaid workers, there's some that will wait till you call, and then there's some, like the family that I dealt with this morning, they actually were told, no, wait till it expires, and then you have to reapply and start the whole process over. Like, it's an easy thing to do. So, but that is something you want to think about. If you have Medicaid right now, at 18 and 19, you got to move them from the kids Medicaid into the adult Medicaid. But SSI usually typically will stay, unless we're talking about SSDI. Because so there are situations where, as a child, they might be receiving benefits from a deceased parent, and then when they turn 18, and they're an adult, and then they're not eligible for the SSDI. But then we apply for the SSI.
I have a question from a parent, maybe like a scenario that you could potentially walk through. So they have a student with a mild cerebral palsy, and so they were looking for funding to assist with medical costs. So what would be what would be their pathway of how they would access some funding to help assist with those medical costs?
In addition, do they already have Medicaid or they don't?
No.
I mean, it is possible that they're eligible for Medicaid.
Okay.
I know a family that has, their son has a lot of medical needs, and she was fine with the private health insurance, but then the insurance changed and didn't cover a lot, and then she came to us to apply for Medicaid because at least it opened up some more opportunities. But even now she's struggling, and now she's been talking to me about, like, I want Medicare too because it would even cover more. But I explained to her it's not as easy as, okay, let's apply for Medicare. He has to be eligible by meeting the criteria. So I would definitely try the Medicaid with this family.
Is there a criteria for Medicaid?
Well, Medicaid, it's going to have to be the disability and the financial need. So they could have a disability, but if they have a lot of money over $2,000, there could be like,
So that person would still need to have SSI first.
We've done Medicaid without SSI. It's just more difficult. If the person's going to go for SSI, we start there. But I mean, we do have some for Social Security. I want to throw it out there. We've had a challenge for individuals that it's a learning disability or mental health, because what they want to see is they don't want somebody to come and say, I need the benefits, and then not try to work and become self-sufficient. So when it's somebody with learning disability or mental health needs, they want to make sure that the person really needs the benefits before they do it. So often it's a little bit harder, and those are the cases sometimes that we refer to the private companies, because the private entities not only do guardianship for a cost, but they do Medicaid and Social Security for a fee also. But once again, we don't want you to pay for that unless it becomes a complicated case. Then we refer you to them, and then they will tell you whether it's worth pursuing or not.
So they would have to be 18 then, do they have to be 18 to get the Medicaid as well?
Unless if the parents are not going to be, are going to be eligible financially, I would wait until 18. Yeah.
For the funds for someone with cerebral palsy, do they have to also have
The cognitive.
They do. It doesn't matter if they are completely reliant on an in-care nurse.
They have to
can't
have
do
the
it.
cognitive piece of it. Without complicating things, usually the developmental cognitive impairment is the IQ of 70 and below.
Right.
So I always encourage families, while you're in school, you want to make sure that you get a clear diagnosis or that you find out where is your son or daughter at. Because often I get them after they left and it's like, well, I don't really know. They could be eligible for an IEP and special ed services, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be eligible for all these benefits. So if the school doesn't provide a psych eval that gives you an IQ and a clear diagnosis, I encourage the families to privately pay to get that done, because you want to get that done as early as possible so that it's clear cut. So for PUNS, they're going to look at anybody under the IQ of 70 and below, or an individual with autism that could have a higher IQ, but has some skills deficits in their day-to-day life. So autism is really the only one that they will not stick to the 70. If, they'll look at the situation if the person is a high IQ, but might fit the criteria because of their needs and their life
But if they were
things.
under 70 with
If they're under 70, they're good.
They qualify anyway.
Correct.
So what does the
Well, if they could be
have to
somebody
do?
with cerebral palsy but not have an IQ of 70 or below, they're not gonna be eligible. They don't have cognitive impairments. But if it's autism with a high IQ, they would consider and look at the situation. Any other questions, comments? Or everybody's trying to get out of here so they can go and enjoy the last
5 minutes.
the last 5. Well, daylight is maybe another 15 minutes, 20 minutes before.
This is, your presentation was quite comprehensive. Everything that's on this presentation is in that book, or what's
Yes.
the best way to?
Yes and no.
If you sign up, you're gonna share the PowerPoint with the links?
Yes.
If they're
Oh, yeah,
signed up?
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So then you
But
have all the
This is a lot
links.
of information. Typically, I do so typically when I meet parents, I kind of say like, this is all that we offer, and then come see us and I'll walk you through each step. These ladies asked that I focus more on the government benefits and give you more specifics. I did it just because that was, that's good to have, but it could still be very overwhelming, which is why we offer the resource call us if you need us. Because it's a lot of information, and sometimes it sticks, sometimes 30% sticks, sometimes 50%. Don't feel like you gotta walk out of here with everything and that you're gonna do it all on your own. You can if you would like, but feel free to use us as a resource. The manual just kind of talks about at 14, what should you think about as far as what should you and your son or daughter be doing as far as gaining independence? So it goes through the different years. Then it talks a little bit about PUNS and what that is. Talks about rec leisure and what that looks like. Talks about transportation. So it kind of gives you a little bit to dig into the different things that are going to happen as an adult. And like I said, it's really, really neat that it has a sample of the PUNS questionnaire, which is, I always encourage families to take a look at that before they go and meet with them. Okay, all the questions, and you want to practice how you're going to say what. Don't make it very positive. I know we as parents like to be positive and say, my son could do A, B, and C all by themselves. If they can, that's great. But remove yourself as a support and think about what they could really do, because then that's going to give them a more clear picture of the needs and the support that they're going to need.
And Laura, we'll include that if you will email us that link directly to there.
Okay.
Do families have to pay to access your services?
No, it's
to help with benefits?
It's completely free. Like I said, it's privately funded. There are there's some areas that we get specific money. So like initially we're out of Cicero. So we started working with Oak Park River Forest was one of our designated areas. Pace and Maywood, which is a co-op, special ed co-op. And then we always had Cicero and Berwick. But now we've been expanding. We have funding that covers the DuPage families, which is why I've been doing a lot of outreach in the DuPage area. So it is completely free. I know it sounds too good to be true, and that's why a lot of parents say, yeah, thank you, but no thank you. There's, something, it's not, there's nothing. And really the family, even though we have specific areas, word of mouth is the best way that we've gone to be known. Parents tell other parents, And I've helped a lot of parents in the Chicago public school system because we're so close to the border of Chicago. And if they call us and they say they need the service and they're willing to meet us halfway, we really have not said no. I've gone as far as Skokie. That was really, really up north. The parent called and I went. And to me, it's a service we have to provide, and whoever calls for the service is gonna get the service. I could be calling local families, but if they don't pick up the phone or they don't wanna be engaged, then I gotta stay busy. And I'm not gonna run out of business because I say I'm like a hairdresser. The hair keeps growing. Once we age you out, then there's more 14, 15-year-olds, and then there's more and more, so we're constantly in business. As long as the funding is there, we're here to help.
If you have a family that has exited out of transition,
We've helped families at the other end too.
they need to get like old IEPs from their school district.
Yeah, and the only thing with that is keep in mind, guys, school districts, I believe, only keep them for 3 years, is it? 7? So sometimes it's like, if they don't have them saved, we call districts and it's like, they've been out of and that becomes harder because if they're 32 now, and if we have to prove the disability, even if they went and got a psych eval at 32, that might not hold for a developmental disability that needed to happen prior to 18. So that's why it's critical that you get a clear diagnosis early as possible, so that you don't have to worry about that after the fact. But yes, we've taken 25, 26, not too many 30-year-olds. When we first started in 2009, because it was so new, we were getting people at the other end because we're like, well, we missed you, we weren't here, so now we gotta catch up. But yeah, we're willing to work with anyone. Thank you, guys. Feel free to get my card and sign your name up if you would like to be contacted, or if I will follow up with you so that you don't forget.
Please make sure you sign our sign-in sheet as well, so we can make sure that we provide you with all this information.
Yeah, no problem. So I see the talent in the morning.
Oh, really? Wow.